everyone. Welcome to Wednesdays with Whitney. I'm Whitney, and this is my dear friend Jasmin Higgins.
Hey.
She is the self-sufficiency counselor at House of Mercy, and she is also one of Dress for Success's very fabulous alums of their professional women's group. That's actually where we had the opportunity to meet.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have Jasmin on here today because you actually had reached out to me. I've been seeing you at a ton of networking events.
Yes.
And I got a phone call from Jasmin, and she's like, "Hey, I've got some questions for you." I was like, "Awesome, let's get into this." And then I was like, "But wait, do you want to ask them live?"
Yes. Information that everyone should know, right?
Exactly. So I actually have very little. I looked at the questions briefly, but I haven't prepared. She's just gonna hit me with them. So this should be really interesting for everybody involved. I haven't really thought through how I'm gonna answer some of these. But Jasmin, tell me a little bit about how you came to Dress for Success. Like, how did you start on your journey with them?
I initially had my first interaction with Dress for Success when I was still in New York. I'm a native of New York. I've been here in Iowa for the past almost 3 years. And so actually on my first day at my job at House of Mercy, Nicole Sickles was coming there to actually tour the building. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
And her and I just started chatting about just my experience and what they do and things of that nature. And so she goes, "You know what, you should come to the professional women's group." And I was like, "For sure." And it's really been amazing. It's been exactly what I needed because, again, I was very new to the area, really didn't know anybody, and also very new to my field. I was a new counselor. It's one thing to have that education, but it's different to not have that experience. I was lacking in that experience.
Yeah, well, as we all are when we start a new journey.
Right.
We're like, we've prepared, we've been educated, we've done our due diligence, and then we're like, oh wait, but I've never actually done this before.
So it was like deer in headlights moment.
Yeah.
So being with PWG has really just kind of boosted my confidence, put me in the right places with the right people at the right time, allowed me to make some really awesome connections, obviously. So it's just been awesome, and I'm very thankful for the time that we've been able to spend together.
Well, and Jasmin made an immediate impact on me when we met at the Dress for Success Headshot Day.
Yeah,
she just walked in with all of this confidence, and I was like, "Girl, all right, here it is." And you were one of the people that volunteered to be interviewed, which is a pretty vulnerable. I think it's a pretty vulnerable space to be in. I think anytime that you're being asked questions and being videotaped, like right now, you're putting yourself out there. And the video that we were able to create from that day. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen
Oh my gosh,
I know.
what? I have not done my job. We will make sure that gets seen. But just the impact that's made on so many people that have watched your words. So now you need to know. I mean, you were there for it, but just having that interaction, and then I've seen you at LEAP events, and I just feel like our paths keep crossing.
Yes.
And even at the time that we were talking back in March, you said, I know that there's something out there for me. I'm not quite sure what it is. I have a general idea, but I'm starting on this path.
Yes.
And I was just really inspired by that because I've been there too. So I'm just gonna let you ask me questions.
I think that's a perfect segue because that was basically what I wanted to talk to you about in the first place. I'm pretty sure that there are tons of women out there, people in general, who want to they have all these great ideas and know that they have something to contribute to the world, to society, to their communities, and don't necessarily know what those first steps look like. There's lots of different hurdles. How do you kind of get past those? So that was the nature of the conversation that I wanted to have with you. So
then I made her have it live.
Here we are. But so just to kind of kick that conversation off, just wanted to ask you, what kind of brought you to your decision for entrepreneurship?
Oh my gosh. So this is kind of my foundation story. I lived in New York for 7 years. So I'm not from New York, but I lived in Rochester, New York, and I was, Have you been there?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so was living there, and I had gotten my master's degree in photography. I had accidentally stayed for a really long time because I was working for a woman that I still love, one of my best friends, and I was managing her studio. So, I was still working in the photography world, still doing what I loved, but it wasn't mine. And I had this day that I woke up and I realized that the legacy that I was building wasn't mine. And that I had a lot of ownership in that space, and I really loved the work that I did, but I wasn't building anything that I could keep. And that was a really hard moment for me because I've always seen myself as someone who makes things happen, but I realized I wasn't making things happen for myself. I was making things happen for other people. Like I was that person in other people's lives that activated their success. And so I decided to move home. And in a sense, I had a safety net. Like my mom lives here. My family is from here. I grew up here. But I hadn't really lived in this town for like 11 years, I think it was at that point. So came home and just had to decide that I got really poor for a while, like the kind of poor where you're like, that's a scary number. But I just decided that I was gonna lean into that. And so I didn't go out to eat and I didn't drink in bars and I lived with my mom for a while, and those are just the sacrifices that I made. I didn't buy a new car. Like the choices that I had to make in order to make sure that my business was number one. So as far as hurdles,
it sounds like you touched base on some of those hurdles. So it sounds like just with you making that decision, there were a lot of pivotal points.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of us can probably recognize that when it comes to making some really pivotal decisions in life, there's some internal work that has to happen. You can't just kind of go into these decisions and not really like make some real decluttering, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. So if you don't mind, and I know this is a little personal, kind of give us an idea of what that decluttering process kind of looked like for you. What did you have to purge to be able to kind of like make that transition?
That is a deep counselor-oriented question. You're doing your job on me right now. How did I declutter? I had to... Well, when I was in Rochester, I did a lot of counseling. So I went to counseling for 3.5 years, like a long time. And that was getting through a lot of my, being a supporter. I'm a supporter. I love, and it's a role I've taken in the community. I love supporting other people. I love lifting them up. But I had to make the choice that I was first.
Right.
And that I was first in my relationships. Like I had to feed myself first. I had to protect myself first before I could do that for other people. And that changed a lot of the way that I interacted with people. Once I started getting really clear that I had to be my number one. And I'm a single woman. Like the default, you would think like, oh, you've got time and space for that. But I wasn't creating that in my life. So, and then I also had to get prepared to take the risk. And that's no small thing. Starting your own business is no small thing. And I knew what that looked like, but that doesn't mean that I was prepared for what the reality of that on the other end. And honestly, throughout these past, I'm 2.5 years in, maybe a little bit over that at this point, and it's constant, like constantly finding the energy to continue doing this.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of a time in the past 2.5 years where I would say that this journey has been easy. There's not really a moment where I'm like, oh, I have it all figured out. Like that has not yet happened to me. So when people are like, oh, you look like great, that's awesome. Like it looks like that. And not to say that like I do have certain things figured out.
Right.
But I'm constantly, because of the nature of human I am, that I am always setting the bar higher for myself. I don't rest easy. That means that I'm constantly just like, how high can we do this? How much more can we do? So teaching myself, I have not taught myself to slow down. And nor do I really want to do that. I find that very interesting when people are like, oh, I'm like worried because you're going so fast. And I'm like, you should be worried when I'm going slow.
This is my natural pace.
Yeah, this is where it goes. If I'm going slow, then I'm probably like, you should bring me some ice cream because I'm not getting off the couch. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. And I just wanted to highlight something that I thought was so awesome is just hearing your story. It makes me recognize how you came to a space where you recognize you stepped into your own power.
Yeah.
You stepped into your own purpose. Yeah. You recognize how your strengths could not only serve others, but also serve yourself. And honestly, obviously make this beautiful business that you have and how you're able to serve others and obviously provide for yourself in the same time. Yeah. And so I just wanted to point out just how awesome it was for you to be able to recognize the power of your own choices. Just to be able to just say, this is mine, this is my life, this is my happiness, and I'm going to take it by the horns and I'm going to run with it. That's awesome.
And thank you for articulating that so well. I'm going to
thanks.
write that down. And I think that's a conversation that we've had, is that deciding that I was able to make the decisions.
Yeah.
That I was the decision maker in my life, and that everything that happens in my life is something that I've chosen, whether it's good or bad.
Yes.
Somehow, and I think that was something, not to turn the table on you a little bit, something that was the starting point of your journey too.
Yes.
Just deciding that your decisions were your own.
Yes. And interestingly enough, it seems like I lived almost my whole life before I recognized that life wasn't just happening to me. I'm relatively passive, for those of you that know me personally. And so I was kind of like one of those roll with the punches kind of girls.
Yeah.
And then one day, I can't even really identify that aha moment, but I recognized one day that that's not it.
Yeah.
Like, I get to own my happiness, and I get to make life what I want it to be. I get to choose how things affect me. I get to choose the people in my realm. I get to choose the things that are coming and going. And when I recognized that, it was the most powerful thing that I've ever encountered in my whole life. And so when I see it in other people, it's awesome.
Well, and you said, like, I came to that late, and I was like, I know people that aren't there yet. Like, and I think it can be hard when you say, like, okay, everything in my realm is under my control. That means that you actually have to actively participate in your own life. You don't get to be on the other end of it.
For sure.
You don't get to be the person that things are just happening to. And I think that there's something easy about letting other people make the choices, and there's something really, really hard about making the hard choices.
For sure.
But I guess I've gotten to a place where I would rather make those decisions than ever let anybody else have that say.
No, definitely. And something we had touched base on before, there's definitely a sense of accountability that kind of comes with that realization. You have to own the fact that, you know what, things didn't just happen to me. There are some things that I allowed. Yeah. You know, there's some people I allowed, some circumstances I allowed, whether painful, great, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. There's some things that we allowed. And so there's this space where you have to kind of own it, grieve it if you need to, and let it go.
And forgive yourself for messing up.
Exactly.
I think that, like, if I looked back all the time, and I do try to take some stock every once in a while, but like, mistakes happen.
Yes.
I can't be perfect. I can't fix everything. I can't. And I think that letting myself not live in my mistakes and say, like, okay, well, let's just move forward.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. So
definitely.
Yay.
So one other question for you. In all of this, and all of the transition and the growth, and we all know, like, growth is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And all of that, what do you feel like was your rock? What were you able to lean on consistently?
Yeah, within myself, I am very lucky to have built up a strong amount of self-trust. So I trust my decisions. And that is single-handedly what has allowed me to do a lot of the things that I do, is because while I have my support system that is incredibly important to me, I don't rely on them to help me make decisions. I really take that as my own. And not to say I don't do the research and look into things, but at the end of the day, I'm the one making the decision, and I'm really thrilled that I trust myself to do that.
That is amazing. That's so delicious. Like, I just love it. No, really, like, it's difficult. I think a lot of people can recognize that it's difficult to come to a space where you can trust yourself to make good decisions, even though previously you may have not made the best decisions, but still be in a space that says, where you can say, I'm good, I'm going to make this decision, and no matter what happens, I know that it's going to be okay, right?
And that's it, because, like, sometimes my decisions aren't perfect, but I made it.
Right.
And I follow through on it, and I pick up after it. And people ask me about regret, and that's just not. I don't have that component in my life, because when I made the decision the first time, I knew cause and effect, and I knew that I was actively a part of that decision. So I think that eliminates that regret piece. Because regret, I think, happens a lot of times when you feel like you didn't necessarily have control in that situation, or you were not maybe actively paying attention to how it happened. So that, self-trust, and then, I mean, my mom has been, shout out to my mom. Hi. She's been there. Like, she's the person I call when I'm like, I can't even speak because I'm crying, but like, if you could just come over and bring some food, that'd be great. And that I just have found, you know, she was the start of my network here. My brother's here. He's been big and just like being around. My Winston, my dog, that's not my brother. My dog is Winston. Just to be clear about that. And then I found just through my entrepreneurial journey, I found some people that I can be incredibly, like almost abrasively real with. My business partner, Emily, is one of those people.
That's always
good. And I just like, I can show up and say, this is really what's happening today. And there's an understanding that like that makes us stronger. That the reality of our relationship and the honesty of our relationship makes it stronger. So
I'm really thankful that you're able to kind of bring that out to the forefront, only because I think in this capitalist society that we live in, I think a lot of times we preach individualism. You know, it all sounds good and it looks great on Facebook and IG and all those good things. But realistically, in a, I don't want to say a male-dominated world, but I guess for a lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to say. A lot of times female business owners are kind of fit into this box, you know, where we even see it in like movies and things like that. Like, for you to be a woman who's successful and in business, you have to be mean and bitchy, or you have to you have to be this, you know, or you have to be that business owner who isn't doing well, but you give everything all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
those are some serious tropes, aren't they?
Right, but it's so relevant. It's something that we see so often. And so we either see this, either you're A or you're B, and there's really no in between. So I really admire your ability to just kind of be true to self and just be Whitney, no matter what, making these strong, positive, powerful decisions.
You can come in
and just. I really admire that, because I mean, I think everybody watching this can recognize that it's just something that we don't get to see very often, and it's a strength that is obviously something to be admired. So I'm very thankful.
Thank you. I mean, that's whoa. That's amazing. Well, and I think that's something that I bring to the table that I love to encourage in others, is that I know that I'm valuable. I know that like my decisions are valuable, and I also know that I'm not perfect. And like I try not to hold anything too personally. Like
I need to work on this.
I'm kind of an oversharer. Like, if you get into a conversation with me, there's not too many things in my life that I'm super private about. Of course, like out here on social media, I'm not always going to be like, you know, telling all the details of my life. But if you're in a one-on-one conversation with me, I would answer pretty much any question. And I think that openness, and I found other people in my life that are equally open, and just to know that like, okay, we can talk about the things that are kind of messy. And like without shame, and like just kind of lifting that veil and letting people know whatever's hard or whatever's really easy. Because I love finding out what's really easy for people. So I'm like, wait, can you teach me that skill? Like, how do I make that easy? Because accounting is not easy. How do you figure that out?
Yeah, definitely. I don't blame you. So last question, but just a little curious. So for other women out there who are embarking on this journey of entrepreneurship, thinking about possibly going into entrepreneurship, and of course this means whether it be a for-profit business or a non-for-profit business, however people choose to kind of go down this journey, what are your words of advice to women who are just trying to get there?
Someday I'll write a book on this. But I think the first thing you need is resilience. It's you need resilience and you need patience, and those two things have to be side by side. I have very little to no patience, and I have a ton of resilience. So I think that I rely on my resilience to get me through more than my patience, and sometimes I have to like fall back and say like,
I could totally relate to that.
I feel like my own personal mantra, my mom gave me a mantra when I was really little, and it's everything always works out for you.
Right.
And so I repeat that there are times where I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, everything always works out for me, no matter what I'm tackling today. And I think that having that mantra, I probably had that in my brain since I was like 6, maybe even earlier. She's probably telling me this in the womb. And having that positive self-talk, like that's the first thing I go to. So that's also something I would say nice things to yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And like if you're saying bad things about yourself, like that gives other people permission to say it to you.
I totally agree.
And if they do say it, now when people say, if somebody says something and I'm like, that wasn't positive about me or about them, I'm able to be like, okay, like that doesn't fit with how I identify with myself, and I get to be the first say.
Yes.
I get to have the first say.
You get to choose, right?
On what is said about me because I made that decision. And vice versa, I try to keep a really strong, positive environment in the studio. I mean, I don't have like a perfect body or a perfect life or a perfect hair day, as proven today. And like, but when people come into the studio, like if they have negative things to say about themselves, I shut that down pretty quickly and as respectfully as I can. But like, we need to have small spaces in our life that we are good to ourselves.
And honestly, I think it's good that you even brought that up, because in the time that I went and she did my photo, honestly, I don't even know. It was just, you poured into me, all over me. It was just amazing. Like my cup was full. It was running over. There was some to share, some to say. It was good. And so, I think you do it in a manner that it doesn't feel like correction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels like gentle guidance. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to recognize, because I didn't even recognize at the moment some of the negative things that I was saying.
Yeah.
You know, I
hear them all the time.
And sometimes it's just, unfortunately, so deeply programmed in just our daily conversation, you know, that those moments of doubt or those moments of, you know, lack of self-confidence, things like that. Sometimes it unfortunately kind of leaks out in our daily conversation, not even really recognizing some of the things that we say.
Oh, most of the time I don't think we recognize the things that we say out loud. And I think if you're going to own a business, keeping positive thoughts about yourself is first, because you as a business owner are the leader of that ship.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter what's happening in my life. I have to give myself the credit first. And I don't think that I could be what I am when I photograph people if I didn't first think that I was awesome. And I think that I think that translates to a lot of other businesses, that especially if you want to live in a world where like your business is based on giving, my business is based on giving. It's giving of energy, it's giving of time, it's giving of value. And if I don't pay attention to that within myself first, like there's no way I could show up for yesterday I photographed 7 people that walked into the studio. There's no way I could show up for them if I didn't have the mental space to do that. So
I appreciate you mentioning how you're able to give. I think there's some people who want to kind of take on a not-for-profit journey in terms of entrepreneurship, because there's this ideal out there, you know, that kind of gives you the thought that, you know, if I'm going to give to my community, give to the world, I have to do it in a non-for-profit, you know, space. Yep. Whereas you are for-profit and still are able to serve that purpose. You know what I mean? So I think that's really awesome. Thank you so much for being able to shed light on it.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked a little bit about that conversation, but I think the perception is that if you're a for-profit business that you're not doing good. And I was like, I make a profit, but I get to choose. I don't have a board of directors choosing how I spend that profit, and I can give to my community as much as I want to. So it was really important when I started a business that it started as a support of my community, because I think Des Moines supports its own. It comes back
for sure
100 times over and creates that network. And I just knew that I'm going to live in this community the rest of my life. And I have to show up for it if it's going to show up for me.
Yeah.
So awesome. Oh my gosh, this is perfect. Jasmin Higgins, ladies and gentlemen, that was an amazing interview.
Yes.
We'll be back here. And then you're going to be at the Dress for Success luncheon, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I will be at the luncheon.
Awesome.
So for all you ladies who and gents.
And dudes.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's allowed.
Yes.
The Dress for Success luncheon, I'm pretty sure you can check out this Dress for Success Des Moines page here on Facebook, but the luncheon will be on September 20th. So please get your tickets. They are available. So hope to see you all there.
And I'll post a link to that. And so you can just like click there. I'll be the keynote speaker, hopefully shedding some really awesome
good stuff.
I've been writing, guys. I have like 3 speeches written. We'll see which one pops up. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.